Hello friends, it's me, and today let's watch Film Theory. Zootopia was stolen from the film theorist. Together, let's go, let's start. Thank you.
Zootopia 2 is actually a retelling of some of the darkest parts of American history. And on top of that, it's a warning of the worst that may yet come. Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that has a cool little fanny pack with the subscribe button right there inside. Want me to inject it right into your veins? So, I don't know if you saw.
Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory. Let's start.
But Zootopia 2 is absolutely cleaning up at the box office. Its opening weekend took home more than $500 million with a B dollars, was the best animated film opening ever, and the fourth biggest opening for a movie, period. Seriously, we are nipping at Thanos' heels here.
Oh, that is an Avengers level threat.
And you know what? Well deserved. It was a really sweet movie. Kind of just the first movie again, but that's okay. With these sorts of sequels, you either have to do something completely different or just more of the same. Both are valid options. If you don't know, Zootopia is a series all about a city full of talking animals, split up into several districts to best fit their needs. Savannah Central, Sahara Square, Tundra Town, and the Rainforest District. Our protagonists are a rabbit named Judy Hopps, who has become Zootopia's first rabbit police officer, and her partner, Nick Wilde, a fox con man turned cop. The pair saved the city and its minority of predator animals from a conspiracy to frame the predators as savage in the first movie. And Zootopia 2 expands the world of the first film, revealing that mammals aren't the only sentient animals walking around out there. Sure, fish may be food, but reptiles are a huge part of Zootopia, hidden in its nooks and crannies and thriving outside of the city itself. We're also introduced to a viper named Gary the Snake, and he's probably like my favorite character ever. He's just absolutely wholesome, and I loved his little fanny pack. Also, have to say that this movie directly addressed part of our last theory from a few weeks ago, explaining how the different districts weren't causing the terrible weather conditions that could lead to the destruction of the city. Apparently, they have something called a weather wall separating each of the districts, along with the climate wall that heats up Sahara Square and cools off Tundra Town. It's actually pretty central to the plot, but it's also not a physical thing we ever really see. Am I saying that these were pickups added at the last minute because of our video? No, but it makes you think. They weren't. It was definitely not a thing they added. But something else that makes you think, the fact.
Alright, so from the previous video that was mentioned, the weather wall, it's not high enough, sadly. I'm so sorry. It is a wall, yeah, but it doesn't block off the sky. The dust will still fall in. The wind will still blow. The heat will still transfer. The snow will still pass by. You need to have a wall so big or so high to the point in which 100 make an entire dome.
That this movie is actually a giant retelling of a big part of American history. Yeah, if you look at the characters in this movie and the conspiracy they uncover, you'll realize that this looks awfully familiar to what you can find in a history book, especially in how Americans worked and were housed over the centuries. And scariest of all, it's actually a huge warning about the times we are currently living in. Yeah, I bet you didn't expect that one out of a movie with a sloth driving a sports car. So buckle up, loyal theorists.
A sloth driving a sports car is linked to... Okay, you know what? A sloth driving a sports car is just fun.
As we drive directly into this theory. So, because this movie is so new, I think it's best that we recap the broad strokes of the plot here so we all know what's going on going in. And obviously, because of that, spoilers ahead. Cool? Cool. So, Zootopia 2...
Okay, so sorry. Spoilers. I'm sorry. Let's continue.
Picks up pretty much exactly where we left off after Zootopia 1. Judy and Nick are now officially partners on the Zootopia police force, but early into their careers here, they go against orders and cause a giant mishap in a major case. Because of this, they're taken off of major duties and forced into what amounts to couples therapy. But Judy wants to continue her actual work, especially after finding evidence that a viper has re-entered Zootopia, the first reptile seen in decades. Reptiles had previously effectively been banished from Zootopia after a murder committed by another viper, so of course, this raises concerns. And worst of all, the viper is targeting the Lynxleys, the family that founded Zootopia and created the weather wall technology that lets the biomes coexist in harmony. But of course, this is a Disney film that needs conflict. Things can't be that simple, as Nick and Judy discover yet another conspiracy. After catching the viper, the Lynxleys order Nick and Judy to kill him, and they're framed for a crime they didn't commit to hide some dark secret when they refused to. After taking the viper Viper, he turns out to be a pretty chill dude named Gary DeSnake, who has returned to Zootopia to try to clear his family's name. See, his great-grandmother was the Viper accused of murder all those decades ago, and she was also the actual creator of the weather wall technology. Reptiles used to live in peace with mammals in Zootopia, and even had their own district called Reptile Ravine. But the Lynxley's ancestors stole the DeSnake's technologies and patent while also framing her for the murder to discredit her. This led to discrimination against reptiles so severe that it eventually led all of them to either leave Zootopia or be forced underground into smaller neighborhoods like Marsh Market. The Lynxleys then used their newfound wealth and power to destroy Reptile Ravine, cover it in snow as they expanded Tundra Town, and turned the land into their own private estate. And now they want to do the exact same thing to another community, Marsh Market. But if Judy and Nick want to lay low while they're on the run, they're gonna need to do more than just smash their phones or change their names. Like, for real, I wouldn't be surprised if every website knows what they want to buy and is gonna serve them up some seriously targeted ads. Something that would be less of a problem with the partner for today's theory, Incogni. So those targeted ads happen because your data is being collected by thousands of companies who then just turn around and sell it without your knowledge or consent. It's annoying when it's like what you watch on Disney Plus or whatever, but it's another
I didn't expect that ad read. I did not expect that.
thing when it's like your full name, your email, your home address, your phone number, and your social security number. Like, dude, how do they even sink their claws into that info? But you have the right to demand that these companies delete your info. The catch? Doing so is going to take forever if you want to do it yourself. Like you're stuck with a sloth at the DMV. Thankfully, this is where Incogni comes in. Incogni will reach out to those companies for you, do all the work, and request that those companies scrub your info from their databases. They'll get your info off the market and deal with any of the objections from these shady companies. Plus, with their new custom removal feature in their unlimited plans, you can point to any people search website where your information is visible, and Incogni's agents will take care of it for you. Incogni have been some of our longest running partners on the channel, and I've actually been using them for years in my personal life. Last time we checked in July, they'd completed 819 takedown requests and saved me over 529 hours, and those numbers just keep going up. We're now at almost 1,000 scent removal requests with almost 900 of them completed, saving me almost 670 hours of my life. That's almost a full month of my time, guys. So if you want to keep your personal information private, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com/filmtheory and using the code filmtheory. That's incogni.com/FILMTHEORY, or scan the QR code on screen and use the code filmtheory to get 60% off an annual plan. Thanks again to Incogni for sponsoring this episode, and now let's take a trip back to Zootopia. Thankfully,
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for supporting this video from the film tourists. Let's continue.
Judy and Nick learn to be better partners. They overcome their prejudices and learn to trust Gary, expose the Lynxleys and their nefarious plot, clear their names, change the hearts and minds of the people of the city, and welcome the reptiles back into Zootopia. Everyone,
Much respect. I'm glad that the prejudice, the biasness involved can be, reduced. That's not how things work in real life though. But still, it's nice to see a happy ending in which prejudice, preconceived notions, biasness, this sort of favoritism, well, can help equalize a bit. It sends a message to the audience, to the viewers that's watching, mostly kids to be honest with you, it's a kid show, that at the end of the day, it's important to treat everyone with respect, give everyone the benefit of doubt, and positivity for the win. Thank you.
has a big dance party over the end credits. Cue the post-credit scene teasing the inevitable third movie that will involve birds as yet another stand-in for a real-world group of people facing discrimination in the modern day. My guess would be native or indigenous peoples. So already, Zootopia 2 carries on a lot of what the first movie did by clearly using its characters as stand-ins for real-world groups of peoples and the relationships we all have between them. Just like the first film used mammal predators as a stand-in for Black or African American communities, this movie has reptile stand stand in for many Latino or Asian communities. I mean, it doesn't really get much clearer when you have a basilisk named Jesus wearing a sombrero voiced by famous Mexican-American actor Danny Trejo. But where are we getting into the history lesson here? And what are the warnings? What's the evidence there? Well, piece of evidence number one, Zootopia wasn't built by who you think it was built by. This was the main conflict in Zootopia 2's plot, right? The Linksleys are credited as the founders of Zootopia and the people responsible for building its most important structures, like the weather walls. But this is a lie. The Linksleys were just taking credit for the work of other people, building up their own fame and fortune at the expense of the people who deserved that credit. Basically,
In real life, this sort of revisionists, this sort of people that rewrite history, happens to be individuals that either is the loudest, that means yell the loudest, shout the loudest, scream the loudest, or written the most amount of documentary, or written the most amount of journalism, even though it's false or fake or just twisted facts about things, or winners of wars, winners of battles, so that whatever they say is the truth, because the real truth is the people that can say the real truth are either killed or threatened or scared to speak up, or blackmailed. Like, look, you can say the truth all you want. Well, it'll be a shame if something happens to you. And historically speaking, unfortunately, the people that actually know the genuine 100% truth cannot speak up.
They stole everything. Now, I'm sure that there are specific cases a lot like this in real life, but broadly speaking, important parts of cities or other areas in the country being created by people who don't necessarily get celebrated does have roots in real-world history. For instance, a lot of the big cities in the United States, particularly on the East Coast, were originally built by people who couldn't take advantage of those cities, or even really live in them. New York City, Washington, D.C., and Charleston, South Carolina were all massive cities that used slave labor to build much of their landscape. People who were obviously not going to be able to freely live in those cities they just worked so hard to make. Now that is a very specific example, and Zootopia doesn't really show that as its specific problem. I mean, what do you know, a children's movie with a talking fox didn't explore the impacts of slavery. Surprise, surprise. So yeah.
Yeah, children's movie, let's keep things lighthearted and all. It's fun, it's joyful, it's entertainment for children's. Let's not go that deep.
Sure, some parallels might be there if you kinda squint. But the Snakes created the weather wall, a lot of technological infrastructure that helped Zootopia thrive. Is there something else in American history that looks more like that? I mean, come on, you know what channel you're on, and you know I wouldn't bring that up if I didn't have an answer. And the answer is yes. In May of 1869, the Pacific Railroad, or America's first
1869 is more than 150 years ago.
Transcontinental Railroad was opened, and I cannot tell you how much of a game changer this was. Railroads were faster, safer, and way cheaper than other ways to get around back then, so being able to go from one side of America to the other or move goods from one coast to another, that was huge! And sadly, for over a century, a lot of the people who helped build the railroad were left forgotten. Immigrants from China. Now, don't get me wrong, many black, white, and Latino people worked on the Transcontinental Railroad, particularly Irish and German immigrants and former slaves freed after the Civil War. The work that they did and the pain they suffered because of it shouldn't be forgotten here either. But there were also a lot of Chinese immigrants that helped build the railway. Some estimates put that number between 15 and 20,000 Chinese workers, with up to 10,000 working at the same time. And this wasn't just hammering railroad spikes into the ground. Sometimes Chinese workers were put into hand-woven baskets, lowered into holes in the ground with explosives, lit the fuse, and were hopefully pulled back up before they exploded. Man, this was just...
Hopefully. And the unfortunate thing is, let's be very honest with each other, did you know this? Okay, maybe if you do know this, to what extent do you know this?
A dark time in history. Sadly, most of these Chinese workers were forgotten or ignored by history, and only in recent decades has a light been shined on their work and this huge part of American history. This is almost exactly what we see in Zootopia, with the backbone of Zootopia's infrastructure being created by the Disnakes, who seem to be stand-ins for similar Asian communities in the United States, given the casting of Ke Huy Quan as Gary. But this sort of work wasn't limited to the Chinese immigrants working on the transcontinental railroad either. From 1942 until 1964, the United States and Mexico worked together on the Bracero program, importing workers to keep railways moving and farms farming. They had terrible conditions, and the work of these Mexican laborers has largely been forgotten by history, another parallel with the Latino-inspired reptiles in Zootopia. So that's laying the foundations of our comparison here, but what about something a bit more concrete when it comes to where people live? Something solid, like a building or neighborhood. Piece of evidence number 2.
Get it? Concrete, as in the walls, concrete, or the architecture, the building construction, concrete.
Zootopia shows us the impact of people being forced out of their neighborhoods. Now, in the last decade, you might have heard the word gentrification thrown around in the news, but what does that actually mean? Well, it's a very complicated topic, one that a video about a cartoon movie with talking animals is not going to really be able to do justice. I encourage you to do some reading and really dive into this issue that has impacted the lives of millions of real people and continues to impact them today. But for the toppest of top-level analyses here, well, the word comes from the old French word gentry, which described, quote, well-born, well-bred people. Jeez, that's not snooty at all. Basically, it's rich people. And gentrification is the process where a neighborhood full of regular people is slowly changed as richer people move into the area. The neighborhoods start to change. Houses get replaced, new stores open, and the prices for everything goes up. So much so that eventually the original people who lived there can't afford to anymore, even if they've been there their whole lives, and they're forced to leave. This has sadly happened all over the country, with one notable example being San Juan Hill in New York City. This was a neighborhood full of—
Look, let's be honest with each other. If the neighborhood get richer, by right, in theory, it should be good for everyone, correct? In theory. Well, what if the community slowly and steadily is being replaced, in this case, by rich people? If the community, majority of community, let's just say 90% or 80% of it, grows and become better and better, wealthier and wealthier, safer and safer, richer and richer and so forth, I think that's a collective win. But if it's lower than 90%, lower than 80%, lower than 70% of the community, of the original community, and by the end of the day, after decades later, that's a no-no, that's not good. Yeah.
Thousands of African American and Puerto Rican families bulldozed and replaced by the high-end Lincoln Center. Doesn't—
Alright, next question. What happens to them? Do they get to live in the same location again? Or similar location?
that sound a little familiar to what happened to Reptile Ravine? Obviously, it's more magical and cartoonish in Zootopia. The wealthy Linksleys used their hyper-advanced technology to move into Reptile Ravine and code it in an environment more suited to them than to the reptiles. They didn't use housing prices to gentrify the area, they used ice and snow. But that parallel does become a bit—
Which is even worse. Because the environment, the literal atmosphere is against you.
more clear when you realize that people have used nature to do this sort of thing in the real world, too. Communities like Enfield, Massachusetts, Kennett, California, and Elbow Woods, North Dakota are all now underwater because of the construction of dams made for wealthier nearby towns. And the most famous example of this, Coahuila, Alabama, takes things even further for our comparison because it was famously an African-American community before it was flooded, similar to the reptile minority here in Zootopia. Sadly, Sadly, there are dozens and dozens of other examples I could point to with gentrification, but you get the idea. And this leads us to evidence point number 3. It's still happening, and it's happening again. So, according to a Stanford University report, minority neighborhoods, especially black neighborhoods, are affected far more than others by gentrification. But while it's true that minority communities are affected more than others, in the end, this is a problem that doesn't just affect one group of people. It can and will affect everyone, because money doesn't care if you're a snake or a bunny. Hear me out. I think it's interesting that the next target of the Linksleys in Zootopia 2 are the residents of the Marsh Market neighborhood. Yeah, the big plans they have in the movie, the conspiracy that Nick and Judy need to avert, is that the super wealthy Lynxes want to expand Tundra Town so that it covers up Marsh Market, exactly like they did to Reptile Ravine. This will inevitably force out all of the citizens that live there away from the area they grew up in and that's best suited for them. People like the sea lions, walruses, dolphins, otters, beavers, and some of the remaining reptiles like iguanas, tortoises, and basilisks. And well, it's not a coincidence that the people here in Marsh Market are depicted in a very specific way.
Hey, bub.
Hey, bub.
Hey, bub.
Hey, bub.
Hey, bub. Hey.
Hey, bub. Hey.
Bub, bub, bub.
They wear overalls and outdoorsy clothing. They have thick drawls and southern accents. Freaking banjos and harmonicas sometimes play when they first show up. Let me tell you, as someone raised in the Appalachian Mountains of South Carolina, these are my people. If predators represent African Americans and reptiles represent Latino and Asian communities, then the mammals here in Marsh Market are very much supposed to be people from rural communities in the southern and midwestern United States. And that can tell you a lot about their role in the themes here in Zootopia. See, sadly, the American South has the highest poverty rate in the United States. In the late 2010s, almost 20% of people living in the South were in poverty. That's basically 1 out of every 5 people struggling hard to find ends meet. And of everyone who was both living in rural areas and in poverty, over half of them were in the South. And these sorts of people are just as much in danger of being taken advantage of by rich people, whether they mean to or not. Yeah, according to a 2005 paper by the
And that's one of the reasons why we always dislike the rich. Eat the rich. Yeah. Yeah. And then someone was just like said, eat the rich, but I'm not the rich. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Alright. And then he's like, no, the ultra rich. So which one do we eat? Do we eat the rich or do we eat the ultra rich?
Housing Assistance Council.
Look, in my point of view, alright, in my point of view, in this current day and age, in this current day and age, it is alright to be a bit wealthy, but if you are ultra wealthy, it just goes against the norms. It just literally goes against the norms. Okay? And when other individuals are suffering and they're seeing that you are not having to bear those sufferings with them, people is going to revolt. People is going to fight back. People is going to resist. You know? And you can hide behind a wall called laws. You can hide behind a wall called rules and regulations. But in Chinese there's a saying, 法律是死的，人是活的. Laws are dead, humans are alive. Which one do you prioritize? Do you prioritize the rules and regulations that benefit the small minority? Or do you prioritize the people that's alive, that's a majority?
This happens more than you might expect, and for a variety of reasons. For example, cities can expand into rural areas, like what happened in Chester County, Pennsylvania. The eastern edge of Chester is close to Philadelphia, so as that city grows, more people from the city move into Chester, and as a result, some people are forced or priced out. Something similar is happening in Teton County, Idaho. This area is close to—
It sucks, doesn't it? The minority of individuals are super wealthy, super rich, and the majority of individuals have to just suffer through because they are not wealthy, because they are not rich, they are not super rich, they are not ultra rich. Yeah. And a lot of times in which the laws and regulations, if it work fairly, everybody's happy. Be it poor, rich, wealthy, whatever, or middle income. But when the laws and the regulations, the rules are actively cornering individuals, putting them in a box, targeting individuals that is significantly poorer. Well, are they a sandbag or are they a human? If you keep punching them down for so long, for so many years, for so many decades, at some point in time they are going to fight back. At some point in time they are going to resist. They are not sandbags, they are humans, they are people. That's one reason why laws need to change from time to time. Rules and regulations need to change from time to time.
A lot of scenic forests and mountains.
So that, for the greater good. For the greater good. The greater good literally for the greater population mass.
So people with a lot of money will move here for the natural beauty, which has priced many longtime residents out of the county. And as a third and final example, wealthy older folks have been moving to Beaufort County, South Carolina as they've retired. That last one actually hits really close to home because I have family and friends in Beaufort and spent a lot of time close to this area while I was growing up in Hilton Head and Edisto. And I can say firsthand just how much this area has continued to change over the last 20 years after this report. It's gotten way more obvious. If the Linksleys get their way, this is exactly the sort of thing that's going to happen to Zootopia too, as the people of Marsh Market are forced out of their homes. They don't care who they hurt because they are so wealthy and powerful, as long as they continue to get their way and get more land, more territory. Like, there's a point in the movie where one of the Linksleys has been confronted by the fact that the people of Marsh Market are going to be hurt and displaced by expanding Tundra Town. And what does he say? Waterfolk, like foxes, are lesser mammals. Zootopia, the movie, is straight up drawing this comparison for us. It's saying that money doesn't care who you are when it wants what you have. And loyal theorists, if we take the message of this movie just one step further, Zootopia...
And unfortunately, that is a lot of times how cultures die, how communities die, how people have to go through this sort of unfortunate suffering. I'm sorry. It'd be good if there will be some proper governing to limit such actions. It'd be good. But in the fictional world, I don't know, man. It's a fictional world.
Zootopia is saying that this is going to affect you too. Yes, you there at home watching this in your underwear. Another line in this movie says that the Linksleys are territorial animals and that they always want more and more land. And while we tend to think about all this stuff involving gentrification as stuff that's happened in the past, it's happening right now. Sure, sometimes it takes the exact same form as the past, with rich people moving into poor neighborhoods and changing them. But in a modern lens, it's also happening with technology. I mean, if you haven't heard, AI data centers are being built all over the country, and according to several reports, wherever they go, they use millions of gallons of water, eat up and overwork the local electrical grid, and then pollute and change the environment. This causes the prices for locals to go up and could force them to leave, all for the benefit of someone who isn't even from there, who isn't even physically there. But just like Zootopia showed us that we can stand up against that, you can stand up for your community too. Man, the more I've thought about it.
And the unfortunate thing is, just like when I say for the greater good, right? Those rich individuals, they can say that, yeah, for the greater good, I'm creating internet, I'm creating technology investments for other individuals. Your greater good and their greater good is different greater good. It clashes with one another. And I prioritize on human lives. I personally believe this thing, when there's life, there's hope. Where there's life, there's hope. Do we prioritize on technological advancements or do we prioritize on humans? I prioritize on humans. Don't get me wrong, technology advancement is still important, but it shouldn't come at a cost. It shouldn't come at a steep cost. It shouldn't come as the extreme, significant, steep cost of the death of communities, the death of culture, the death of people. It shouldn't. Please don't.
This comparison is so one-to-one, maybe the birds in Zootopia 3 are just gonna be AI tech bros. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory, Zootopia is doomed.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video from the Film Tourist. I hope you guys enjoy and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you, subscribe.